Okay, so I've been with Brian for almost 5 years now. 5 years. We're both in our early 30s. I'm 29, he's 31. And honestly, I thought we were in a pretty solid place. Until last Christmas, that is. Some background. I'm an architect at one of Boston's top firms. And not to toot my own horn, but I've done pretty well for myself. Like, really well. I designed a couple of award-winning sustainable buildings downtown, and my name's getting recognized in the industry. But here's the thing. I never told Brian's family about my success. When they asked what I did, I just said, I work in architecture, without elaborating. I wanted them to like me for me, not for my job or my bank account. Brian comes from this super traditional suburban family. His parents, Deborah, and Harold live in this cute but kinda dated colonial in Lexington. They're big on family values, Sunday dinners, and all that Hallmark movie stuff, which, don't get me wrong, can be sweet. But they're also low-key judgmental about anyone who doesn't fit their cookie-cutter idea of what a good match for their son looks like. Last Christmas was supposed to be our first holiday together with his family. I was nervous but excited. I bought them thoughtful gifts, a vintage record player for Harold who collects vinyl and a Kate Spade scarf for Deborah, baked my grandma's famous snickerdoodles, and even wore this conservative LL Bean sweater instead of my usual Madewell. Stuff just to make a good impression. When we pulled up to their house in Brian's Subaru, everything seemed picture perfect. Twinkling lights, wreath on the door, the whole 9 yards. Deborah greeted us with hugs. Well, Brian got a real hug, I got that awkward side thing. And Harold gave Brian one of those manly, back-slapping embraces while just nodding at me. The first night was strained but manageable. We all sat around drinking eggnog, spiked with Maker's Mark for the adults, watching Elf on their massive Samsung TV. I tried making conversation about safe topics like their gorgeous Christmas tree and Brian's childhood ornaments. Then bedtime rolled around, and this is where it all went south. So, Sophie, Deborah said with this weird, tight smile, we've set up the guest room for Brian and there's a cot in the garage you can use. I literally thought she was joking. The garage, in Boston, in December. Oh, I laughed awkwardly. You're kidding, right? Harold cleared his throat. We have a space heater out there. It's perfectly comfortable. Brian just stood there, looking at his freaking Sperry boat shoes like they were the most interesting things in the world. But it's freezing outside, I said, still thinking this had to be some weird joke. Deborah's smile didn't reach her eyes. Well, dear, we're a bit traditional. Until there's a ring on that finger, we don't have unmarried couples sharing rooms under our roof, and the guest room only has one bed. I looked at Brian, waiting for him to say something, like, hey, Mom, that's crazy. Sophie and I live together in the same apartment with the same bed that we share every night. But nope. Crickets. Y'all, they had me sleeping on a fold-out cot in their garage. There was indeed a space heater, but it barely made a dent in the cold. I could see my breath. I was surrounded by garden tools, golf clubs, and boxes labeled Christmas Village 2018. I spent the night wrapped in my North Face parka on top of the blankets they'd given me. The worst part? Brian came out for like 2 minutes to check on me, whispered, I'm sorry, babe, just a few days, then scurried back to his warm guest room, with a private bathroom. I texted my bestie Alyssa at like 2 a.m., currently freezing to death in my BF's parents' garage because I'm not official family yet. Pretty sure there's a mouse judging me from behind the Halloween decorations. The next morning, I came in looking like a zombie that had been preserved in ice. Deborah offered me Folgers coffee like it was some kind of consolation prize, asking if I'd slept well with this fake concerned voice. I spent 3 days sleeping in that garage while they all enjoyed their heated bedrooms. Brian kept promising he'd talk to them, but he never did. Just kept saying, that's just how they are, babe. Don't rock the boat. By the time we left, I was honestly reconsidering our entire relationship. Like, is this guy really who I want to potentially spend my life with? Someone who won't even stand up for basic human decency? Fast forward to March. Boston got hit with some crazy rain, and a pipe burst in Brian's parents' neighborhood, flooding several homes, including theirs. Their basement was completely underwater, and there was enough water damage that they needed to stay somewhere while repairs were happening. Brian called me, all desperate. Babe, my parents need a place to stay for a couple weeks. Their insurance is covering a hotel, but everything's booked because of that tech conference. Could they possibly crash at your place? I know your apartment is small, but they're really stuck. My apartment. My small apartment. The one Brian thinks I have. See, Brian has never actually been to my real place. We always hang at his apartment because it's closer to our favorite spots. He assumed I lived in some tiny studio in Somerville because that's what I could afford on what he thought was my entry-level architect salary. But here's the thing. I own a penthouse in one of those gorgeous converted historic buildings in Back Bay. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the Charles River, custom kitchen with Viking appliances. You get the picture. I worked my ass off for it, saved every penny, made smart investments, and yes, had a little help from the inheritance my grandparents left me. So when Brian asked if his parents could stay at my little apartment, I saw an opportunity I couldn't pass up. Sure, I said sweetly. I have room. But just so you know, I only have one proper guest bedroom. The rest of my place isn't really set up for guests. Brian was so relieved. Thanks, babe. You're the best. They'll take whatever you've got. Oh, they would indeed. Update to Brian, and his parents arrived at my building on a rainy Tuesday evening. I texted him to meet me in the lobby because, security is tight. You should have seen their faces when the concierge greeted me by name and the security guard tipped his hat with a friendly, "Evening, Ms. Taylor." There must be some mistake, Harold muttered as I led them to the private elevator that goes straight to the penthouse level. This building looks expensive. I just smiled. It's historic, built in 1908 and renovated about 5 years ago. The elevator needed my fingerprint to access my floor, which made Deborah's eyebrows practically hit her hairline. When the doors opened directly into my foyer with its 14-foot ceilings and that statement chandelier I splurged on from Restoration Hardware, I wish I'd had my iPhone ready to capture their expressions. Sophie! Brian gasped, looking around at my open-concept living area with its wall of windows showcasing the twinkling Boston skyline. What the? You live here? Welcome to my home, I said casually, dropping my keys into the little Jonathan Adler dish by the door. Let me give you the tour. I walked them through the main areas. The living room with my mid-century modern furniture, the dining area with the custom table I designed myself, the chef's kitchen where I was in the middle of making a charcuterie, bored and had a bottle of Veuve Clicquot chilling. I don't understand, Deborah kept saying, touching things like she couldn't believe they were real. You're an architect's assistant, right? I'm an architect, I corrected her. Senior partner at Greenform Designs. I led the team that designed the new sustainable wing of the MFA and the Riverside corporate complex. Brian looked like someone had smacked him with a Dunkin' iced coffee. But why didn't you ever tell me you lived like this? I shrugged. You never asked. And we always hang at your place because it's closer to our favorite sushi spot. The tour continued, and I showed them my home office with framed copies of Boston Magazine and Architectural Digest featuring my work. Harold actually seemed impressed, asking genuine questions about my career for the first time ever. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. I led them down the hallway, past my bedroom with its ensuite spa bathroom, past the gorgeous guest room with the queen-sized Casper mattress and Brooklinen sheets. And this, I said, opening a door to what used to be a large storage closet that I'd hastily rearranged that morning, is where you'll be staying. I'd cleared out most of the storage boxes, but left my bike hanging on the wall rack. I'd set up 2 Coleman air mattresses on the hardwood floor, topped with basic Target sheets and some throw blankets. There was a small space heater that actually worked quite well, unlike theirs, and a camping lantern for ambiance, since the room had no windows. The silence was deafening. This is, Harold started, the only space I have available for non-family members, I finished smoothly. Unfortunately, my guest bedroom is reserved for official family only. I'm sure you understand, being traditional and all. Deborah's face went through about 17 emotions in 3 seconds flat. Brian looked like he was choking on a chicken bone. Sophie, can I talk to you for a sec? Brian pulled me back into the hallway, his voice a harsh whisper. What are you doing? You have a whole empty bedroom right there. I kept my voice sweet but firm. I'm respecting your family's traditions, babe. They made it very clear at Christmas that only official family members get proper bedrooms, since I'm not family. To them, they're not family to me. It's only fair. That was different, he hissed. Was it? Because I distinctly remember shivering next to a weed whacker while you slept in a heated room with a private bathroom. Brian ran his hand through his hair, something he does when he's stressed. My mom is going to freak out. Well, I smiled. She can always stay at a Holiday Inn. I hear they're very accommodating. I walked back to where his parents were still standing, looking shell-shocked in the doorway of their room. I put some toiletries in that basket, I pointed, to a little Dollar Tree basket with basic necessities. The bathroom is down the hall. You'll be sharing with Brian. Oh, and breakfast is at 7. I make a mean avocado toast. Deborah looked like she might spontaneously combust. This is the best I can offer for non-family, I finished. For her. I'm sure you understand, being traditional and all. They ended up staying because, well, they didn't have much choice. Their house was still under repair, and all the decent hotels were booked solid because of some big conference at the convention center. That night, I slept like a baby in my California king while they tossed and turned on those air mattresses. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. Update. The next 2 weeks were interesting, to say the least. Harold actually adjusted pretty well. The man found my ESPN Plus subscription on my smart TV and basically lived in my living room watching the Celtics games on a screen bigger than the one they had at home. He even started making us coffee each morning with my fancy Breville espresso machine, after I showed him how to use it, of course. Deborah was another story. She oscillated between being coldly polite and trying to find fault with everything in my home. These windows must be impossible to clean, or all this open space must cost a fortune to heat. Classic passive-aggressive stuff that I just smiled through while sipping my morning smoothie. Brian was caught in the middle, looking increasingly uncomfortable as the days went on. He'd pull me aside and try to convince me to let his parents use the guest room, but I held firm. Family only, babe. That's the rule they set. The real turning point came during the second week when I hosted a dinner for some colleagues. I'd, completely forgotten about it when I agreed to let the Wilsons stay, but I wasn't about to cancel. Some of the biggest names in Boston architecture were coming, including the dean of the architecture school at MIT who had been my mentor. I told Brian and his parents they were welcome to join us, of course. What should we wear? Deborah asked stiffly. Whatever makes you comfortable, I said. It's pretty casual. Which wasn't entirely true. My industry friends tend to have that effortlessly elegant Boston look. Not formal, but definitely not sweatpants. The evening arrived, and my colleagues started showing up with bottles of Whispering Angel rosé and artisanal cheeses. Deborah and Harold emerged from their closet bedroom looking painfully out of place, her in a dated Talbot's dress that screamed suburban mom, and him in khakis with a polo shirt. What they witnessed over the next few hours clearly blew their minds. Person after person greeted me with genuine warmth and respect. The MIT dean hugged me and loudly proclaimed to anyone who would listen that I was the most talented designer of her generation. The head of my firm casually mentioned the ridiculous bonus they were giving me for bringing in the new hospital wing project. Brian just stood in the corner by my built-in bookcase, nursing a craft beer and looking increasingly like he'd seen a ghost. His parents made awkward small talk, but I could see them watching me, really seeing me, perhaps for the first time. After everyone left, I was loading the dishwasher. Yes, even successful architects do their own dishes. When Deborah approached me. Sophie, she said quietly, can we talk? I nodded, wiping my hands on a dish towel. I owe you an apology, she said, the words seeming to physically pain her. The way we treated you at Christmas was inappropriate. I waited, not making it easier for her. I've always wanted the best for Brian, she continued, and I had this idea in my head about what that would look like. A nice girl from a certain kind of family, you know? When Brian brought you home, She trailed off. You decided I wasn't good enough, I finished for her. She had the decency to look ashamed. I was wrong, clearly, she gestured around at my home. But even if you didn't have all this, I was wrong. The way I treated you wasn't right. I nodded slowly. Thank you for saying that. Tomorrow, she continued, Harold and I are going to a hotel. We've found one with a cancellation. I think we've imposed on you enough. You don't have to do that, I said, surprising even myself. You can stay, and I hesitated, then decided to be the bigger person. You can use the guest room for the rest of your stay. The relief on her face was almost comical. Thank you, Sophie. Later that night, Brian found me on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. You're kind of amazing, you know that? He said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I'm aware, I replied with a small smile. I should have stood up for you at Christmas, he said quietly. I was a coward. Yes, you were, I agreed. He was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking a lot these past 2 weeks, about us, about the future. He turned me around to face him. I don't want to waste any more time. And then, right there on my balcony with the Boston skyline twinkling behind us, Brian got down on one knee and pulled out a ring box. Sophie Taylor, will you marry me? I looked down at him, this man I'd loved for 5 years. The man who let me sleep in a freezing garage rather than stand up to his parents. The man who was only now seeing my true worth. I need some time to think about it, I said softly. The shock on his face was clear, but to his credit, he nodded and stood up. I understand. I need to earn back your trust. Yes, I said. You do. Final update, it's been 6 months since that night on my balcony. Brian's parents went back to their repaired home as different people, especially Deborah, who now calls me regularly just to chat. Harold sends me articles about architecture whenever he spots them in the Boston Globe. As for Brian and that proposal, I made him wait 3 whole months before I gave him my answer. During that time, he went to therapy to work on his people-pleasing tendencies and his fear of standing up to his parents. He proved to me that he could be the partner I needed, someone who would have my back no matter what. I said yes in July, on a sunset sail around Boston Harbor on my friend's boat. We're getting married next spring. And yes, everyone will have proper bedrooms at the wedding hotel, even the distant cousins. Sometimes people need a taste of their own medicine to recognize their behavior. But more importantly, sometimes we need to see ourselves clearly reflected in someone else's eyes to know what we truly deserve. And trust me, we all deserve better than an air mattress in the garage. Metaphorically speaking, of course.